Hello and welcome to Fly With Your Shadow. My name's Jeff Robson. I'm coming to you from my home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. This is not one of those slick, fancy, perfect-sounding shows. It's just me in my basement talking to you and my guests about things that really matter to me. The two things that I'm most passionate in talking about have to be music and mental health. Both have been a major part of my life for as long as I can remember. This show is my way of combining them and sharing some meaningful conversations with some really interesting people. Since I was just a kid, I've struggled with depression and anxiety, but I really, for most of my life, had no idea what it was or why I felt as bad as I did. At times, life seemed too hard and too much to bear, and I've spent way too much time wishing and planning for death because I thought I was the only one who felt the way that I did, and I had no idea that there was something that I could do about it. Since then, I've learned a lot about my conditions and the things that I need to do to keep myself safe and relatively happy. And I think that talking about these things is one of the most important things that I can do. Maybe this show eventually reaches someone who feels as sad and alone as I have, and maybe that person realizes that there's a way out of the darkness. Maybe. More likely, though, I hope that just everyone who listens will learn something and maybe will be more able to recognize the signs that you or someone in your life is struggling with a mental illness and needs help. I want to make it perfectly clear that I'm not a mental health professional. I don't profess to be any kind of expert at all. I'm just a guy who's extremely lucky to still be around to talk about these things. I try to be a good listener, and I want to support anyone who might need it. So feel free to email me at flywithyourshadow@gmail.com if you have any questions or you just want to talk. There are also links on the website at flywithyourshadow.com where you can get in touch with organizations that know how to help. The thing I'm most comfortable talking about, though, is music. Music has been a friend, a comfort, and a savior to me continually. I'm not a musician, but music has become a huge part of who I am and what keeps me going. Since 2002, I've been fortunate enough to host a show called Tell the Band to Go Home, which originates on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Through that show, I've met some really incredible people. I've also come to recognize that the same darkness that's followed me throughout my life is present in a lot of the musicians and music fans that I've met. Each week on the show, I'll speak to someone I admire and appreciate and think that I can learn something from. And hopefully you will too. The show isn't meant to be heavy at all. It won't always be about mental health and illness because there's so much more to life. But that darkness and those issues never truly go away for me and many others. I've learned not to try to ignore it or hope that it goes away. Instead, I take what's happened in my life and use it as a fuel to motivate me. I'm very excited that it's finally brought me here. I really hope that you'll enjoy this show. This week on the show,
Every day I'm slipping just a little more off course. Still looking out for all the signs.
Yeah, I'm Leeroy Stagger, and I'm a 38-year-old singer-songwriter, producer, father, and husband, and I like to make stuff. I think one of my gifts is to help people, find some sort of healing in art and in their own story. I love connecting with people and hearing their stories, and I try to, be a storyteller as much as possible. And, but yeah, I'm just, I'm a human being walking the path like everybody else.
Leeroy Stagger was one of the first and most important discoveries that I've made through Tell the Band to Go Home and through my longtime friend and supporter Alison Green in Victoria, British Columbia. His first album, Dear Love, came out in 2003, and it grabbed me right away after Alison sent me a copy because she knew that I'd like it. And boy, did I.
And it's all welcome home reunion to the city where the stars no longer shine.
Leeroy has appeared on Tell the Band to Go Home a number of times, and we've spoken and hung out many times at festivals and shows across the country and even over in Germany for a while. It's been amazing to watch him grow from the hard-living, scrappy, arrogant punk rock-influenced kid that I first met into a thoughtful and wise, mature singer-songwriter and family man. He's put out 11 or so albums and is preparing for the release of a new one called Dystopian Weekends. He also has a book out called Strange Path, which you can order along with his albums and some great shirts and bandanas at LeeroyStagger.com. He also hosts a great radio show of his own on Alberta's CKUA network called Dirty Windshields. Enough rambling. Let's get to my interview with Leeroy Stagger, which was recorded right at the end of 2020.
I can't take another phone call, talking to a screen. We are falling through the spaces in between.
So one thing we talk about on this show is sort of how 2020 affected you. So I always like to start at the beginning. At the beginning of the year, we really had no idea. So what was your plan for 2020 coming in?
Before the pandemic?
Yeah, before we knew anything about it. Like, it seemed like we all
okay.
had visions and plans and ideas for what was going to happen, and then,
Yeah, I think, so in March, beginning of March, I was heading to Vancouver to make a record, and I went through the States. I decided to cut through the States.
Yeah.
And we decided we were going to stay with our friends in Seattle. So that was like a Tuesday afternoon, and as I was rolling into Seattle, it was like right at rush hour when we were rolling in at like 5:00, and I was like, "Why is there no traffic? Like, what's going on? Like, is it a holiday here or something?" So I texted my friend, and I was like, "Dude, was it a holiday? Like, what do you guys?" And we'd kind of heard like rumors of this coronavirus thing. But like my thoughts were like, okay, just don't stop anywhere and like wear gloves when you touch the fuel filler thing.
Yeah.
So I roll in. He's like, no, no, it's like pretty crazy here, man. Like it's kind of like this coronavirus thing. I was like, oh, weird. Okay. We hadn't really kicked in Canada yet. So we crossed over. We stayed the night there and crossed over the border, and made this record in Vancouver. But the whole time it was all starting to kind of the chips were starting to fall in Canada.
Right.
So we were getting all these news updates on our phone as we're trying to make this record in this big black bunker of a studio, with no natural light coming in, and you're getting all these weird updates, and it seems like the world's ending outside the door. And so we were there for a week, and it kind of gave it this weird tone on the record. But then I was supposed to go to the island, Vancouver Island, for a couple days to visit with my folks, and my wife called and was like, I think they're going to close schools down here. So I was like, okay, well, I better rush home. And it was just like this weird feeling of doom as it was like Mad Max. Like we raced home, made it like the fastest we'd ever made it from Vancouver to Lethbridge. And, so my plans really, like, before it all kind of went down were like no different than any others, I guess. Like we just toured Scandinavia for the first time in December. So I was like, okay, great. There's like a whole new market to like play music in. We're going to go back as soon as possible. And then and we'd been asked to go on tour with Frazee Ford over there. So it was like this huge, big year like planned. And I was going to make this record and, just going to work, like do the things, like no major plans or major goals. But so then anyway, it kind of all hit and we were all locked down in Lethbridge, and it was great for the first like 3 months. It was like really good weather. I hadn't spent that much time with my family in so long, and me and my wife were getting along. Me and the kids were having a great time. We were outside a lot, and it was really, like I said, the weather was really good. We were doing all this gardening, growing vegetables, making bread, all the stuff, that everyone, and it was really great. And then all of a sudden, it started to set in that like we couldn't see our friends, we couldn't see my in-laws. And I was like, oh, this is not, I don't know. Like I'd kind of thought about moving back to the coast for a while. Like it had been in the back of my mind for the last 5 or 6 years.
Oh yeah.
And it was like it took the pandemic to just me to go like, what am I doing? You know, you only get one life. Now's the time. So we literally, you know, we packed up our lives of 10, 15 years and our kids and all of our stuff and the dream studio that I'd built and moved back home to Victoria.
And so that wouldn't have happened, you don't think, if the year had unfolded as planned?
I don't think so.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it took it took all of this for my wife to kind of put it in perspective. And you know, there's nothing wrong with Lethbridge. It's just it's a certain lifestyle, and we just outgrown it, or we'd also almost like never fell into it, you know, because I travel so much.
Yeah.
That I could go to places like New York City and get my cultural fix, and
Right.
but the recreation for us just wasn't cutting it, and then so she's changed her tune. She's happy to be on the coast here, and yeah, it definitely wouldn't have happened. I mean, it probably would have happened in the next few years or something, maybe.
Yeah.
But definitely not this year. Was not the plan.
Your kids are pretty young. They're not in school or anything yet, right?
Yeah, they're almost 8 and almost 5.
Oh,
so
really?
Grade
Holy
2,
cow.
grade 2 and going into kindergarten. So, yeah, it was weird for them to leave their friends and stuff, but it was kind of the perfect time to do it. So, yeah.
From a career perspective, you had established yourself. You pretty set up there. You had a beautiful studio that, like you said, your dream studio, and you had a bunch of people coming to record at your house, and you were able to get to a whole bunch of spots from Lethbridge. It seems like a fairly good place to tour off of, you know, as far as there's lots of great gigs in Alberta, and you can get into the States fairly easily and stuff.
Yes and no. I felt like, I mean, yes and no. I felt like it had kind of hit, it had done what I needed it to do, and then I needed to get to the next thing. I needed a new adventure.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard. Like, you know, as you guys know, in Winnipeg, it's like the prairie winters are just, it's a different kind of lockdown, isn't it? It's, I never liked traveling in the winter on those roads, and so I just I was over that anyway. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm also like to get anywhere. It's like it's a 5-hour round trip to the airport with a car, because the flights out of Lethbridge were so unreliable that it wasn't really an option.
Right.
So you're looking at 5 hours of travel time added on, and then if you want to go anywhere in the winter, it's just you're gambling with really bad roads. And so it was just it was one of those weird things where I was like, it's like, let's see what's next, you know?
Yeah.
And plus we'd been touring a lot up the west coast of the United States, and our following was starting to build up out west here in Canada too, which was, encouraging.
Uh-huh. So where are you at with your status as far as your music career? Because it seems like it's kind of been on an interesting roller coaster. Like, you know, when you were young, you were like, it seemed like you wanted to take on the world. You wanted to make great records and sell lots of them and tour all the time and whatever. And then you became a family man, and I feel like you kind of maybe didn't count on the music career quite as much, or put it in a different kind of perspective.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I wrote this in my journal this morning, actually. I saw some footage of my side project, Easton Stagger Phillips, from Ireland. And I mean, I guess it was probably 10 years ago at least. And we were so young and fresh-faced. But I was looking at myself and like kind of with this lens that was like, I had such a different, what I wrote down was Rockstar ambition. and then now it's almost like this like I'm a tradesman like I'm a tradesman that's like magic. That's what I wrote down. And what I mean by that is that I don't particularly have the rock star ambitions anymore because, just I have to make a living. I have to pay the mortgage and put food on the table, and that, so it's like that's first and foremost. But at the same time, I'm also a performer and an artist. Right. So the marrying of the two is really important to me because I want to be able to be consistent. And part of being able to make a living doing this is that consistency of like doing good work, not necessarily like the same thing over and over again, but like consistently, I want to be able to put on a great show and make people leave one of my shows feeling like they've seen something special. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's kind of like less. That's what I wrote, like Rockstar ambition back then, and now it's like a magic tradesman.
So obviously, your life depends on a certain amount of all those different things in order for you to survive financially. Like you have these tours lined up, and I would imagine that you're probably making most of your money at those shows these days. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it. It's interesting because, I'm making the most amount of money on the road, but I'm also spending the most amount of money on the road. Yeah. So it's kind of like evens itself out in a lot of ways. I'm somebody who I just like diversity in a career. I don't like to be doing the same thing over and over again. I don't like to be on the road all the time. I don't like to be in the studio all the time. So I try to mix it up as much as possible. So I'm lucky enough that I've, somehow gotten a stream of income of royalties enough to kind of, pay the mortgage with royalties, and then anything else has always kind of been the cream on the crop. Right. Cream on top rather. So, it's been like a year of like learning how to be a bit more austere with our finances, but also to like make investments in, like, we're building the new studio right now, and that's expensive to build and do all that stuff. But, I mean, I don't think it can continue. I couldn't continue without working for, I can maybe squeak out another 6 months or 8 months or a year if I had to. And I was working part-time at the record store for an old friend that I used to work at when I was a kid, and that was great. But I realized that, this is awesome, but this is taken away from the artist in me, which is my career path. Like, let's face it, I'm a 38-year-old man. I've been doing this for long enough now that this is my career. Even though I still have those moments of like, oh, what am I doing? Like, why don't you go get a real job, like an adult job? But then anytime I do, I'm just like, well, no, this doesn't feel right to me, Yeah. And I'm not making as much money. Yeah. So I don't know. I've been really lucky, Jeff. And you I mean, that I've just been really, really lucky, and I'm grateful, now more than ever, the luck. And I mean, also, like, I've worked hard for the majority of my career.
Well, you've earned it for sure. I mean, you've made so many records and done so much touring and stuff that,
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I've put in the work, which is that's the thing. But there's always that blue collar guilt thing, right? Of well, this isn't a real job. And I've certainly worked enough labor intensive jobs that I know what it feels like to work for a living, outside of music, and I don't I don't take that for granted that I've seemed to have eked out a living. But that being said, too, like, also, the royalties and everything, that all like is based around an album cycle. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I still like to work. I still like to make records, and I feel like my writing is getting better every record, which is, that's a really nice feeling as an artist. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I got to make records, but I also want to make, if not like, I don't want to say better, but I also want to make like something different than the last thing I did, and I want to feel like something is improving, whether it's my singing, or for me, it's like the easiest thing is to like get better as a songwriter. Right. Or just write something differently. And,
So this new period, has it forced you to reevaluate kind of who you are or any of those things? Like,
Yeah.
has it forced you to put any of those in a new, yet another new perspective?
Yeah, there's been yeah, absolutely. I think it's like, especially right now, the last, like, moving somewhere new where, I'm from here
Yeah.
and all my family's here, but I can't see my old friends, and a lot of them have moved on to other places. So I can't make any new friends. So you have this weird, like, identity that lives in a vacuum. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, so yeah, I'm constantly having to evaluate who I am and do that work more than anything right now. That's what I'm working on, is this, like, self-care work, and, like, just because I was starting to spiral into this this darkness that was a lot of negative talk in my head, and which just kind of transpires into this, like, low-level depression, which I'm not someone who, like, I haven't gone, like, deep depression for a long time since I quit drinking.
Yeah.
It's always this kind of, like, low-level melancholy thing that what it does for me, it manifests into this, like, weird eating thing, like this weird, like, mind eating disorder kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this happens to me on tour. So there was this, like, dichotomy of, like, loving touring but also, like, dreading it, because I would start off strong, and, like, I'm someone who goes out for a month at a time on the road, and I could get through the first half of the month, the first few weeks, like, really strong, really like, taking care of myself, and then all of a sudden it takes, like, a couple bad days where all of a sudden it's just like I'm dark for the rest of the tour, and it's just like this holding pattern until I can get home and reset. So, but I was starting to, like, fall into that pit again here at home, and kind of hit a wall with that, and had made a couple emergency phone calls and talked to some people, and realized what it was, and what it is just, for me, it's this thing that I call the path. That's just what the name that I've given it.
Right.
And for me, that's like this mixture of spirituality, fitness, and under this, well, I mean, spirituality, I use that as a loose word. But for me, it's like I practice Buddhism, which means, I practice meditation within that Buddhism structure, and fitness, which you know about.
Yeah.
And for me, that's running, and also nutrition, and that's my path. Like, when I'm on my path, when I'm doing the work to, like, to stay on that path, that's when I feel like I hate to use that word, and so I'm not going to. But some people say, like, living your best life, which I guess is great. But
Yeah.
that's when I feel like I'm truly doing the things that are, that represent me fully, that represent my spirit. So that's like my key, is like, am I on my path? Sometimes you got to get off of it to, like, see it,
Right.
to, like, have that, to look at it. And that's normal. I think that's, like, very normal, to, like, to fall off and veer off and do those things. And sometimes that, like, puts things in perspective. And as an artist,
Yeah.
I need that perspective too, right? I need to feel that darkness. One of the therapists that I've been talking to for years, really great guy. The first, when I went to him, was because I couldn't get on an airplane to go do 4 nights in Chicago with Los Lobos, and I couldn't get on the plane. And I thought, well, that's it. I've just shot my career in the foot. And I didn't like that feeling. So I went to him and I was like, okay, here's my issues, like, cure me. And he just laughed and was like, no, And I was like, what do you mean? What am I paying you for? You know? And he's like, this is something that's always going to be with you. This is a part of you, this darkness and this fear. He's like, I don't think it's ever going to leave. So he's like, you might as well learn how to live with it.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been, you know, part of my journey and part of my path to look at that darkness, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think I think in a lot of my music I write in terms of light and dark, and so I guess it is this darkness that I've learned that's a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And the tools that I have now through meditation and Buddhism and all that self-work is like I can live with it. I know how to talk to it. I know what it is, and I know how to deal with it when it arises, and now it doesn't hang around as quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's been a real gift, you know? So yeah, there's been a lot. Your question was, you know, have I had this crisis of identity? And absolutely. I mean, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
But especially now, where it's like I've realized like I'm so tied to my career and this name of, you know, this Leeroy Stagger name, that I've forgotten who I truly am.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not just a performer, and I'm not just an artist and a producer, and that's just part of what I do, like my true essence, and I'm still figuring out what that is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's other things that I have to offer outside of music, and I'm just looking constantly, trying to figure out pieces of that puzzle.
Right. Now, going back to that path a little bit, I've been revisiting your book, Strange Path, which you put out a year or so ago.
Yeah, something like that.
And in it, you're very honest and open about you know, some of the things that you've been through in your life, and you had a lot of, not necessarily the easiest time growing up, and I suspect that,
Sure.
like me, some of those early hardships and some of the things that we've seen and been through led you to some pretty scary places in your life. Is that fair to say that you know, this guy who's found the balance and found the way to live a good life hasn't always been around?
Yeah, and it's still not, you know, it's still not like that every day. I mean, growing up in an abusive household, in my formative years, I don't know. I don't like to like sit on, some days, like I kind of need those labels to just kind of understand what I'm going through a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I also don't like to have to label myself as something, or, you know, PTSD or whatever. But I guess the science behind it also helps to like know how to heal from it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I got sober at 25 because I realized really quickly that continuing on the path that I was on, I would, you know, probably be dead, or at the very best case scenario, have a very poor quality of life. You know,
Yeah.
Not too far down the road. So I don't know. I've always had this awareness of somewhat awareness of self to know when I just was too far gone down the wrong way, to know like, okay, I need to do something. And also just like whatever magic or divinity, whatever you believe in, I've also had like these moments in my life that have shown up at the right time to get myself better, you know.
Right.
Met people like literally at the exact moment. You know, I was just, when I was really, really dark, I just happened to be on this like tour in Alaska, of all places, like for the first time ever, and happened to be on tour with people that were going to an AA meeting, and I was just like, oh, I'm coming. You know, and it was just like, I didn't even like have a choice. I didn't even think about it. As soon as I first heard that's where they were going, and they were reluctant to even tell me where they were going, but as soon as they said that, I was like, I think I'm going to come. And because I was already ready, you know what I mean? Like I had gotten myself sober for a month, a few months before that, and that was like, it was just hell. But doing the work after that, and like doing therapy after that, you realize like the alcoholism is just, it was a symptom of this like pain, childhood pain and trauma that I'd never even dealt with or even come close to understanding. So as soon as I started dealing with that, it just was so much easier. And you don't want to like, I don't want to be like a bitter person of like, oh, this happened to me when I was a kid, and like, damn all those people that did that to me or whatever. Because that's just like part of it. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's like,
absolutely.
it's part of,
and that's what this show is all about. It's about taking, the negative stuff that we carry around, whether we brought it ourselves or somebody gave it to us, and not letting it hold you back anymore, not ignoring it, because I don't think we, like you and I don't think we can ever be cured of that darkness. That stuff's always going to be there. We always kind of have to keep it in check, and we always have to know what we have to do to keep ourselves healthy. And I think that once you know that and you accept that it's never going to go away,
sure,
if you use that kind of as part of who you are, you can be sort of better for it.
Yeah, and let's face it, I mean, I've made a living exploiting that part of my personality, you know what I mean? And like, and you've made a lifestyle out of it too, you know what I mean? It's like you love that music and the part, and you take part in that, and that's your community. But we also have seen the people that haven't gotten out of that, exactly, and it just breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart even more to like when I lose my friends, to that stuff, when I know that there's like an option, a way out of it, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's like it's a ton of work. It's a ton of like painful work, but also like this joyful work and these breakthroughs and all that stuff that like doesn't ever end. It's just like constantly, you have to do it for life, you know what I mean? Because it's easy to sometimes like rest on your laurels and go like, oh, I'm good. And then all of a sudden it just hits you like a 2x4 in the face. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, time to do the work again, Yeah,
you can't ever kind of forget about it and think that you're cured, or think that, you're past everything now, because it has a way of, has a way of reminding you. It's good to like talk about it. Well, exactly.
Yeah, it's good to talk about it.
That's kind of,
I think it's like really helpful. And I mean, like there's that whole fellowship of AA, and say what you want about a 12-step program. Like I understand the hesitation towards it, but I also have seen, I've seen it work time, and it worked for me. And because I didn't think about it too much, I just thought, you know what, I'm sick and I need to like do this. And I'm convinced that doing the 12 steps were really, really important to me finding my path. And, the thing about spirituality, and especially like Buddhism, it talks a lot about the ego, the egoic nature of oneself. And I found that the 12 steps basically obliterated that ego. And I'm sure you saw it with me, and back in the day, it was like my ego was pretty good. I had a pretty big one. And it wasn't healthy because it wasn't my true self. I was like living this like mirror image of what I thought a person like a rock star kid, fucked up kid should have been, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I realized like that's not my true nature. And so like obliterating that ego in the 12 steps was like really important for me. And I think like a lot of people, they don't think that should happen, which it's fine. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
If you don't think that, if you think you need your ego to survive, then that's your own prerogative. But for me, it was like we all have some sort of ego, I guess, in the world that we're living in, and under capitalism and all that, and this idea of self. So like I have enough that I built it back up to a healthy spot, but that so the whole 12-step thing was really imperative for my journey. And I'm not somebody who like preaches it or lives, I don't even really live by it as much as I used to. But just to do those 12 steps was like really important to me to heal.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many ways that people can find to better their lives. I mean, the 12-step program doesn't necessarily work for one person, but the fact that it worked for you and has worked for so many other people is great. I mean,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I never really had addictions.
Whatever gets you there.
I always grew up with I'd seen what addictions can do to my family, so I've always been terrified of drugs and alcohol. So I've always tried to stay away. But I learned about this group called Emotions Anonymous, and I thought that was for me. But I went there and I had trouble with like the first step where you have to admit that you're powerless and turn your life over to a higher power. And I was like, well,
yeah.
How can I be powerless? If I'm powerless, then what am I doing here? So for me,
well, it's interesting, but yeah.
Me, that was the block.
Like,
that kept me from going
right
on that thing, and I had to find something else. But maybe that was just my...
That's what everybody... And that's where everybody stumbles. Like everybody that I've met that has stumbled with a 12-step program, that's exactly where they stumble. But for me, it was like that Neil Young thing stuck in my head the whole time. The more you think, the more you stink. And I was just like, I am not going to overthink this. I'm just going to do what they say to do. And then I'll come out on the other side and then I'll decide. And it was like, for me, it was never this like higher power of like God for me was like, I had no secularism in my family or in my life per se. So it was just kind of like, well, what, is a God of my understanding, which is like, I get to make that up. You know what I mean? Right. So that's why, and a lot of people just can't seem to get past that. And I think that's like fairly normal, especially if you have any sort of religious upbringing. That scares a lot of people off. But for me, no, that was like super. I was just like, okay, well, I obviously cannot manage this by myself.
Yeah.
So I'll just give it up to whatever that is, like the mountains or Mother Nature or whatever. It was just kind of this thing of like, I'm done. I can't do this by myself. So that to me was obvious. I lasted a month, and then as soon as my plane landed in Glasgow, it was like game over.
Yeah. And so is that you're constantly working on these things to try to make sure that you stay healthy, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just don't like feeling down. I like feeling good, and I also like don't like being. I don't like those parts of my personality that come out when I, get into those places.
Yeah.
I don't like how it makes me act around my kids or my wife or my bandmates or anything like or my friends. So, but who I really don't like how it makes me act towards myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important to me. It's really important to me.
How much do you worry about passing some of this stuff on to your kids? I mean, I worry about this all the time. All the negative thoughts and things that go through my head. I don't want my kid to have to deal with that. But at the same time,
well,
I guess it's so much of
right?
what has brought me here, and I think I've learned a lot about it that. Maybe it's not as scary as maybe I initially had thought.
Well, the difference is that we're able to like talk to our kids about it.
Yeah.
Where like that
Nobody
wasn't
talked to
discussed.
us, right?
No, and that's the worst part.
Yeah.
Child psychology basically states that if you get mad at your kid and you scare them, but don't explain to them what happened and apologize after, that's where the damage is caused.
Right.
If you explain to them what happened and that you lost control of your emotions and that you're really sorry, that's like that's, I don't know, child psychology 101 says like that's okay. They're going to be all right.
Yeah.
But if you leave them wondering what they've done wrong, or they're stuck in their head for, all the time going, why is dad yelling at me again? Or why is mom, why did mom hit me? And then not understand where any of that comes from. That's the problem. That's where the trauma starts to lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, I just feel like, yeah, I'm sure my kids will like inherit some sort of, things in their DNA that are not going to be, optimal, but my kids are going to be told that their parents love them all the time, which was just, not part of my childhood, and I'm guessing yours as well, and just, so I think it's like they're just so much farther ahead than we were.
Yeah, for sure. Getting back to the career a little bit, looking at the future. So you've got this record, you're building this new studio. What do you hope things are going to look like for you? Going forward?
Well, that's where I start. That's where I always get into trouble, right? Is when I start to think about the future, and have these expectations of how it should be. Honestly, it's just a day by day process of seeing what happens. Like, I have no idea what. I don't want it to go back to normal. To be honest, I don't want it to go back to what it was before. A big thing for me is realized what I don't want in my career, and a lot of that just has to do with places I go. There's a lot of places I don't think I'm going to go back to.
Like Winnipeg, for example.
That's a tough one because I have so much love for that city, and seeing my friends there. Maybe Chris Freyer will have some mercy on me at some point. He's always so nice to me when I see him at these festivals, so maybe he'll book me again. But yeah, there's just like, I just don't want to go out for weeks on end. I just want to go places that I really enjoy being and where people want me and will come to my shows. And like I said, is like half of my touring career was subsidizing the half that was losing money. So if I can just forego the like money losing places, that it's one thing to like go to New York City and lose money. That's like fun.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just like been really put things in perspective because I like hanging out with my kids and I like being here for them. So, as far as the studio goes, like I don't want to have to take a bunch of work that I don't want to do. Yeah. So, I've gotten pretty good about that in the last couple of years anyway. So I'm going to be, particular about what I take and I don't mind if the people are really lovely and not difficult to work with. I don't mind if the music's like not, top notch.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't mind like helping people to like make their music get better. But, I've made some records in the past where I just needed to pay some bills. Yeah. So I took them on and it was just like banging your head against a wall. So I don't want to do that anymore. And that's one thing that I've definitely decided, during 2020 is just how I tour and the work that I do has to be meaningful and has to be worthy of my time and the people that I work with's time and that's it. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't even know if there's going to be venues by the time we start playing again. Yeah. I don't know if like the touring circuit's going to be so clogged up. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm in that weird like middle ground of like I'm able to play smaller places that I could go play a hall. I don't need to go play in a bar. I can go play in a hall or like a community hall or something. You know what I mean? Like I'm always going to be able to get creative and I'm not so big that I can do those things and it's meaningful and worthwhile.
And yeah, I guess there's no way for us to control what's out there when it happens or what it looks like. So we just have to.
No, we're really lucky to be, to live in. We're really lucky to live in Canada.
For sure.
Say what you want about the federal government, but the people that can't work, they've taken care of us as best as they can.
Yeah.
And you look at other countries, and it's just not even close. You know.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who likes to work. I don't want to be reliant on the government, but at the same time, like, I'm just grateful that I have that fallback. It's there if I need it.
Right. So when does the record come out? Do we have a release date and all that stuff? Or
it was supposed to come out February 18th or 15th, I think. And it was literally at manufacturing for vinyl, and CDs, and then I had a panic and decided I didn't like the mix and pulled it, and it's being remixed right now. So it shouldn't be too much longer. I'm thinking probably February for CD and maybe March, April for vinyl, which is at this point, it's like, well, I don't think I'll be touring by then anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like it's a cool record. It's very different than anything I've done. I don't know if you've heard any of it. You might have heard a little bit of it.
Well, a few songs, you've gotten a few things out.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard for me to like speak on it versus my other stuff, but I feel like the songwriting's really strong.
Yeah.
It's different enough. It's also like, I definitely wanted to like pay tribute to some of the music that I love that I haven't really touched on in a long time, namely like the more like somewhat country singer-songwriter-y thing.
Right.
I referenced a little bit of like 60s and 70s Chris Christopherson and the Byrds and stuff like that too. So I just felt like it was time. Like I felt like the last two records, not counting Me in the Mountain, were I definitely didn't like sacrifice quality, but it was more more of like a wider net, like more mainstream, I guess.
Yep.
Production wise and songwriting wise, and this one I was just like, I was so burnt out. I love my band, but we all needed a break, so I went and worked with some other guys, and just kind of made a record that I liked, that I would want to listen to.
And so you're putting it out yourself this time?
Yeah, I think so. So my manager, Kate, she has a record label called Tonic Records, and she puts out like Harpoonist and the Axe Murderer records.
Oh, yeah.
And, so it'll probably come out through Tonic and my thing. But yeah, my record deal with True North, I fulfilled the deal there, and didn't get renewed as far as I know. So. Yeah.
And
which is fine, it's nice to like feel like in control of your art again. Not that I mean, I loved working with them. There was no qualms there at all. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like good things are to come. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, things are to come. I don't know if they're good or what. It's just one. Like I said, you just put one foot in front of the other and follow the path. Yeah, so we're just it's all in it. It's the one beautiful thing that this whole year has kind of shown is like who are the really important people in our society, and it's like it's yes, art and it's valuable, but like the whole stardom thing or like that thing is like so worthless as soon as the rubber hits the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I just have so much respect for doctors and nurses and frontline workers and grocery store workers and truck drivers than I do for, a star or something. Like I think that work is important as well. Yeah. But like to put them on a different level is just so that's the one thing for me that I really appreciate. It puts so much in perspective, Yeah.
It's that age-old feeling. Doesn't matter where you've been. It don't discriminate religion or the color of your skin.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Leeroy Stagger almost as much as I did. The music you heard on the show today is from the song The Mountain from Leeroy's record Me and the Mountain, and it's used with permission from Leeroy, which we really appreciate. I also threw in a quick little clip of Worn Out Welcome Home from Dear Love. Again, you can check out his music, his book, and his life at leeroystagger.com or follow him on social media. You can also buy digital downloads and merchandise on Bandcamp. A great way to support him is on Patreon, where he has one of the most active and interesting communities that I've seen. So check out patreon.com/Leeroy Stagger. Fly With Your Shadow is a show that will always be free. You'll never hear annoying ads. I'm never going to ask you to send me money. There's no Patreon page for this show. This is a labor of love designed to be accessible and free to everyone. I do, however, hope you'll support the artists and venues and people that mean a lot to me because they've given so much to me and I'd love to give something back. If you do want to support the show and our efforts, the best thing you can do, besides listening again next week, is to spread the word. Tell a friend or two to tune in. Share this episode with someone who might find it interesting. Follow us on social media at Fly With Your Shadow, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we'll keep you posted on new episodes and new information. If you're so inclined, taking a moment to review the show on your favorite podcast provider, Apple Music or Google Podcasts or wherever you got us, that would really help us to spread the word and get the message out. I'd love to hear from you anytime with questions, comments, concerns. If you want to talk, anytime, flywithyourshadow@gmail.com. I'd really love to hear any feedback that you might have, and I hope that you'll join me again next week for another great conversation here on Fly With Your Shadow.